do is go ahead and get this webinar started. We've got Earl McLain. He is your coach for today, talking about mastering communication. And Earl, I'd like to turn it over to you to just tear it up for these guys.
I appreciate that, Brad. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here. We really appreciate it, and thank you for a little bit of the time delay. We're experiencing a little bit different webinar today than what we normally do. Normally, Eric Janesco is here, and he kind of is the captain of the ship, and he runs the webinars. And Brad and I were trying to figure out how to get in. So the technology part of this is always kind of a challenge for us. But if you're having trouble with your sound quality through your computer, call in instead. You can use the dial-in number 909. Well, I don't know if that's the actual dial-in number. I think the dial-in number was in your email. That's not the number I dialed.
No, it's not, Earl, but let me give it to you real quick because I've got it right here. It is.
Go ahead and post it in the chat.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's what I'll do. 914-339-0029.
Perfect, perfect. And then use the access code, I believe it's the 469-606-637 is what it looks like. So if you're having trouble with your speakers, go ahead and just call in on the phone. The quality is a lot better. Okay. So we're still talking about your brain and human behavior, mastering communication. We're in part 2 of the Triune Brain Theory is what we're talking about right now. It was funny because I was listening to Peter Bregman this morning and on a webinar, and he was talking about that one of the biggest mistakes that people make, especially in sales, but not just in sales, in everything, but the biggest mistake that they make is they feel that they've got to sell something. They feel that they've got to sell you. When really, I look at sales a whole different way. I think people come to be heard. They don't come to listen. They come to be heard. And so I believe that actually listening more than you talk is the best way to sell. So let's just kind of recap a little bit of what we've talked about so far. And we're talking about sales in regards to the Triune Brain Theory by Paul McLain. And actually, I think that's spelt wrong. Paul McLain, I believe, is M-A-C-L-E-A-N. I'm looking at it on my screen right now, and it just didn't look right. But Paul McLean, he was a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist, and he developed this theory about the triune, saying that we basically have 3 different drivers in our brain. That we have the reptilian brain, and we talked about the reptilian on our last series of this Triune Brain Theory. I think it's been probably about 3 weeks ago. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, go back through it, but I'll do a little bit of recap on what we've talked about there. We also have the limbic system. That's the midbrain or the mammalian brain. They call it that because it most likely has characteristics that are much like a mammal as opposed to a reptile, which if we know what we know about reptiles, they're cold-blooded, they eat their young, they only care about themselves. And so the limbic brain actually does some bonding, and it is interested in communication with other people. Then there's the neocortex. Now this is the part of the brain that we really think about when we think about looking at that gray matter under our skull. I don't know if anyone's ever touched the brain or seen a real brain, but it's kind of a soft gray matter, kind of cushy. I've had some people explain it to me like curdled cottage cheese, kind of a dense but really pliable. You can actually stick your finger right through it, and that will make sense as to why I bring that up as we go along. The prefrontal lobe is part of the neocortex. So we're still in our triune. The prefrontal lobe is the part of the brain that's kind of the CEO. It's what actually, well, most mammals don't have prefrontal lobes. Humans are the only mammal who does. And the prefrontal lobes has this great sense of vision. Prefrontal lobes can come up with a consequence to an action. So we can say, well, if A and B were to happen, then I'm pretty certain that C would be the result. We're the only mammals that can actually do that. That's why deers get hit, crossing the road. They don't think about, well, if I walk into the street with this car rushing down at 60 miles an hour, I'm going to get hit. And so they don't actually have that. So let's look back just a little bit on the reptilian brain and kind of go through that again. I just want to give you a recap on it so that you'll really understand where the limbic system plays in, because we're talking today about the limbic. The reptilian brain is the home of our panic button. It is there to keep us safe. That's all it's supposed to do. It's not a very smart brain. Now, this makes a lot of sense when you think of the last argument that you were in or the last confrontation that you had with a client when they're very angry. A lot of times we say things that we resent later, or we regret later is what I mean. Things that we didn't really mean. It's because it's not a real smart brain. It's the home of our panic button, but it has 3 tools and only 3 tools to use, and that's fight, flight, and freeze. Now, when Dr. McLean came up with this, he was looking at epileptic patients. He looked at cats, monkeys, other models, and he used electrodes to kind of stimulate the different parts of the brain, and then he looked at what their responses were. And the fight, flight, and freeze mechanism, he believes, lies in the reptilian brain. That basal ganglia is the actual name of it. The fight, flight, and freeze. Now, the reason that like I said, it's not a real smart brain, but the reason that we have these tools is simply to keep us safe. If we are walking through the woods and we run into a black bear, we don't want to try to Google our chances of survival. We want to either get the heck out of there, that will be the flight mechanism, we're going to freeze and pretend it doesn't see us, or we're going to fight back. Those are the 3 mechanisms there to keep us safe. Okay? The reptilian brain, it's a gatekeeper, if you will. It monitors everything that's around us. It's wary of anything new or different, wants to keep change and growth completely out of the picture. It's not comfortable with those sorts of things, all right? And its only job is to keep us safe. So in our world, as mortgage bankers, what it means to us is the people come to us, if they are in any form of reptilian, and it doesn't have to be an extreme example. It can be a real mild reptilian reaction that they're facing. I don't know if you've ever been sitting in a meeting with someone and you notice just by their body language that they're looking for the catch. They're trying to figure out how you're going to try to give them something that they don't want. They're in a mild form of reptilian. Their arms are crossed, their legs are crossed. They don't seem receptive. In this brain, they're not listening to very much of what you say because, like I said, it's not a real smart brain. So the idea is to help them feel safe, to pull them out of the reptilian, so then we can go into and talk to the limbic system. And it's real simple. Yep.
Earl, I want to jump in here real quick just so everybody is paying attention to this part right here. Here's the thing that I know we notice when we coach loan officers, and you guys are the snake. I mean, you do realize that you don't have to be unsafe to be perceived as, or for that reptilian brain to be kicking in. A lot of originators get really excited about programs that are coming up, how they can save people a ton of money. We're passionate and excited about what we do. That passion and that excitement, when you're calling out and the first thing you do when they answer, it's like, hey, I just got to tell you about this really cool. I mean, right then, I want everybody to understand that you can be that reptilian, that reptilian part of the brain is kicking in. So I just want to make everybody aware what you're talking about, Earl, right now is something that you really want to pay attention to, because you're going to show us how to get past that and be able to be passionate about what we're talking about.
That's absolutely right. When I first started this webinar today, I said that that Paul Brigman was talking about that people feel like in a sales situation like they have to sell, and it's just not the case. And like Brad was saying, we get excited because we know we can help people. We do this every day. These people that we're meeting with, it may be their first loan. It could be their second loan. But at any rate, they don't do this very often. And because of the state of the market, because of the press that the mortgage industry has received, there's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of people that come to us, and deep down inside, they're afraid. They're scared as hell. They are, because they don't know what they're getting into. They don't know what you're going to try to sell them. They don't know, and they feel like they're going to be taken advantage of. Getting past that reptilian is the key to simply getting someone to listen to you. I'm sure you guys all have great presentations. You got amazing products to offer people. I know that, and I know that we can help people. But until we get past this brain, they're not going to listen to very much what we say, because it's not a very smart brain. So they can't listen to very much what all they're doing is looking for the catch. All they're doing is trying to become safe. The reptilian brain likes routine. It likes predictability. reptilian brain is probably one of the, you know what, we went into this in depth 3 weeks ago. If you were on this webinar, you should have gotten, or you should be getting a link that will take you to some of our past webinars. When you go into those past webinars, look for the Triune Brain Theory, Mastering Communication on the Reptilian Brain, because it'll explain it in detail, exactly what I'm talking about. And we also give you some really good options on how to get people out of reptilian. It's a matter of keeping them safe. I can tell you how I do it. When I first sit down and meet with someone, in fact, I'm going to be doing a whole training tomorrow in Iowa. And the way I open up my trainings, because like I said, this doesn't just work with our sales. This works in everything that we do. It works with your kids. It works with your wife, your girlfriend, your husband. It works with everything that we do. The way I open up my webinars is I simply tell the people, say, I know that you know, you're excited about having another consultant come in. You know, the way I open up my trainings, I mean, and they laugh about that, you know, another consultant, because they've seen them all before, and they're coming here wondering if they can trust me. They don't know me yet. So what I do is I give them some options. I simply tell them right up front. I say, look, I said, I want you to know something. I'm going to hopefully shed some light on some things that maybe you haven't heard before. Most of it you probably have heard. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to let you know that I understand that you don't have to do anything with this. So the whole training today, if you don't decide to do nothing at all, that's completely your choice. But on the other hand, if you decide that you want to go to another training and find out some other information from someone else, that's okay too. You know, I would encourage you to seek out, you know, some kind of coaching around your position in your sales. The third option is that, you know, you may decide you should do this on your own. There's a lot of great information on the website. There's a lot of great information on the web in general around coaching and sales activities and all that. And you may want to go do the research all on your own. And, of course, the fourth option is that you can decide to maybe take some of the ideas that we present here today and run with them and just give it a shot. Well, in a sales situation, what that looks like is it's a four-option opener. Basically, you're telling them, you know, if you decide, you know, to do nothing at all today, that's okay with me. All right? It just might not be the right time for you to do a mortgage after we talk. Now, I have some mortgage bankers that just really, you know, when I tell them that, you know, that they can tell them not to do anything at all, they say, no, man, I want to make the sale, man. I'm here to close the deal. You know, well, let me tell you something. You're not going to close the deal as long as those people are in reptilian. So all this is meant to do, it's not designed to tell them to walk away. It's designed to open up their brain and get past the reptilian and make them feel safe. So in a sales situation, I tell them, say, if you decide to do nothing today, that's okay with me. It is. And also, if you decide that I'm not the right fit for you, then I want you to know that that's okay too. In fact, if there's any time during our talk today that I feel like I can't help you, I'll be honest with you and I'll let you know that, okay? But you tell me too if you don't feel a good fit here and you decide that you'd like to use somebody else. The third option is that maybe you decide that, you know, to go out and do this on your own. There's mortgage companies online. I wouldn't recommend using them, but it's an option that you have. And the fourth option is that we do connect today and we have a good basis for a relationship and we do decide to do work together. Fair enough? Now, when I come down to that fair enough, it's a slam dunk deal. They say, oh, yeah, well, the reptilian is lowered. Now I've gotten past the reptilian. Now they can listen to what I have to say. They can listen to my entire presentation. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you folks. Go back through that other webinar that we did on the reptilian brain, and I think you'll understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about. Brad, are you shuffling papers?
Really I am sorry. I thought I had to unmute. I was just responding to some of the questions. There's some great questions coming through on Jerry had asked, you know, what's one of the ways how do you apply this stuff to your first phone call? And basically, Earl, I was just kind of saying, you know, the one thing is when you start out your script, you want to say something like, hey, if you had $300 extra this month, what would you guys do with it? You know, and it's in casual conversation. Or something, another one is, hey, I don't know if this is for you or not. It's kind of the takeaway thing.
Right, there you go.
And so you're making them want this information, and that's how that opens that up.
Exactly. And you'll notice that when people call up, and it's that first phone call, or when you call them, the only thing they know to to judge you by any other company out there, the only thing that is in their head, that gets stuck in their heads as consumers, is rate. That's the only thing that does. And so that's probably the question they ask all the time. You know, the minute you start talking, they say, well, what's your rate? They don't know anything else. That's the only way that they can discriminate you from anyone else. There's no other differentiation that they can come up with in their minds. And so they try to come up with rate. Well, let me tell you something. Rate is never the issue, ever. It is never the problem. If cost were the issue, then Macy's would no longer exist. If costs were the issue, there'd be nobody buying Mercedes or Cadillacs or any of the higher end cars. It's never about price. It's just about what they understand is a point that they think may be valid. Okay, so yeah, those are great answers, Brad. Those are great answers to that. You know, this may not be for you. I don't know if it is or not, but maybe when we finish talking. Another answer is, you know, to get them off of rate. I know that rate is really important to you. I'm going to have to ask you some questions to find out, you know, exactly what you need in order to do that. But let me tell you something right off the bat. If you don't want to do anything after I give you all of my information, if you don't want to do anything, that's okay. This may not be for you. I just want you to know that's okay. And I'll tell you something about those 4 options, folks. They know they have those options. They know they have those. You're not giving them anything that they don't know. You're not surprising them with something that that is completely revolutionary to them. They know they don't have to do anything. They know that they could walk away and use somebody else. They know that they could go out and do it on their own. And they know that they could use you as a potential candidate for their mortgage. They understand all this. All you're doing is letting them know that you recognize that. You understand that. Okay, so let's get into the limbic brain before we go any further on this, because the webinar we did on the reptilian, it goes over this in depth. Okay, so I would encourage you to look back on that webinar we did about 3 weeks ago. Okay, the limbic brain, or the mammalian brain, it has characteristics that are most like mammals. So once we make it past that reptilian brain, and they're no longer afraid or no longer in fear, then the next question that they want to know is, they want to know, do you care about me? It's the second gatekeeper. And it wants to know, do you care? It wants to know, do you respect me? Do I matter to you? Do you value me? That's where the limbic system houses. Now, the interesting thing about the reptilian brain is there's no verbal centers in the reptilian. There's also none in the limbic system either. It's not until we get to the neocortex. But the neocortex is really where we want to have that logical conversation. So figuring out how to get there is our first job. And this isn't a lengthy process either. This can be done very, very quickly. I've done both of these parts in a paragraph where I simply state, you know, these are your options, but what I really want to do is I want to find out what's best for you. And so in order to be able to do that, I just need to know, you know, what does a perfect mortgage situation look like to you? And also simply listen and start asking questions that prompt them to tell me what their values are. I'm connecting with the limbic system. Okay? The limbic brain is the seat of our emotions. It's the home of our values. It's the gateway to our long-term memories. It's said that our long-term memories are housed there, and our long-term memories are something that we actually connected with on an emotional level. It's not these things that are real superficial to us, in other words. It's not a logical thing. Look, for example, let me give you an example of that. I don't know how many people on the line right now are old enough to remember when Kennedy was assassinated. I remember that. I was in junior high school. I was quite young, and I can remember walking down through the hallways and seeing it on the TV, and because the whole school was broadcasting it, and it was an amazing. It was tragic, and it connected with me on an emotional level. Let me bring it a little bit more current. How about when the space shuttle Challenger blew up? Can you remember? Just think back to where you were, and if you're not old enough to remember that, think about the Twin Towers when they got hit, okay, by the terrorists. Think about everything that you can remember about that. It's almost like you can go into your mind and you can bring back the feelings. You can bring back the everything about that incident. It's just like it happened yesterday. Are you there? Can you understand what I'm talking about? Those are our long-term memories. Now, let's par that with something that's on a more logical level and see what we can remember. The Nobel Peace Prize. Can you name the last 5 Nobel Peace Prize winners? I can't. I might be able to get 1 or 2. How about for those of you that are really into sports, Major League Baseball? Who were the last 5 MVPs? Can you think of that? You know, these are things that we learn and that we hear about or we know on a logical level. Those aren't the things that we remember. Those aren't the things that we connect to. John Rady said that we remember what we feel is important, not what we calculate is important. What we feel is important. You want somebody to remember you? Get in touch with the emotional side of their brain, okay, which is in the limbic system. Here's what we remember after a week. When someone sits and talks to you, here's what we remember after a week. If we hear it, we'll remember about 5%. So if we were just doing this as a conference call right now, you would remember about 5% of what I tell you today. If we read it, in other words, if we can see words, okay, we can remember up to 15%. If we see it, if I do a PowerPoint presentation for you and I have pictures, things that connect with your limbic brain, pictures connect with you because that's where our creativity centers are. Our mind thinks in pictures. When I ask you what your favorite ice cream is, you don't see in your head pistachio or chocolate chip mint. You don't see the words. You see the ice cream in your head. When I ask you what kind of car you drive, you see that in your mind. You see your car. You don't see, you know, whatever the name of your car is. If we can actually get you doing exercises, so if I was to ask you right now to write down 5 things that you remember when you were a child, you know, that made a huge impact on your life today, if you start doing that sort of thing, you'll remember even more, up to 52%. If I ask you to repeat the exercise, you remember up to 75%. But here's the interesting part, is if I can get you to feel something, just like with when the Twin Towers got hit, if I can get you to go back and feel something and connect on an emotional level, you can remember up to 100% after a week of whatever it is that we're discussing and talking about. Limbic characteristics. The limbic system reaches out. It has a sense of team and family. It takes ownership. It's global. It's moral. It's very powerful and creative. It's also, it interacts in bonds. So unlike the reptilian brain, who only cares about self, you know, a lot of lizards and snakes, and if they're hungry enough, they'll eat their young. They don't bond, okay? But the limbic system bonds. It's flexible. It's not turfish. It's protective of loved ones. That's team, friends, job visions, etc. And it's silent. There's no verbal centers. So that means that our limbic system actually watches what happens. It watches body language. It watches characteristics. It hears, it sees things that we don't see consciously. When we think of things consciously, we're in our neocortex. We're in our main brain that we use to communicate and to it uses logic and reason. And we'll be talking about that next week, by the way. We're going to get into the neocortex. But right now, just understand that the reptilian brain and the limbic brain, neither of them have any kind of verbal centers in them, okay? So it watches what happens. So what does this mean to us? Well, in an initial consultation, for example, like we talked about a little bit ago, in an initial consultation, if you sense any kind of body language that tells you that your prospective client is in reptilian, then you need to address that. If you notice that they could be maybe if they're not in their neocortex, if they're not relaxed and listening and engaged, that's one way to tell that they are either in reptilian or they're stuck in their limbic system. They want to know, am I safe? Can I trust you? And then they also want to know, do you care about me? Do you respect me? Do I matter to you? Do you value me? Okay? So in our initial consultations, if we just keep that in the forefront and design a way to come through. Now, there was another webinar that we did, I guess it's been probably a month, maybe even a month and a half ago. We did it on the ultimate interview, which was a process that you can use to uncover the needs of your client and also connect with their values and find out what's truly important to them. Now, I know a lot of you have probably heard about this before. I know By Referral Only is a company that teaches a lot about that. Todd Duncan even has his high trust interview actually goes into a lot of that needs assessment. But you've probably heard the word needs assessment. Brad, I'm sure that you use some sort of a needs assessment with your clients, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, and it's just a matter of finding out what it's not really about finding out what their needs are as much as it is connecting with their values is the important thing. I've had some people that do some sort of needs assessment, but they don't really go deep enough with the needs assessment to connect to the values. Once you connect on a value level and you connect on an emotional level with your client, you won't have them shopping you. Price won't matter. It just won't matter because they feel heard. Remember when I first came into this, I said that Paul Bregman was stating this morning when I was listening to him that the biggest mistake that salespeople make is they feel like they have to sell. And really, your client or your prospective clients, your prospects come to you or you go to them, and really, if they are a qualified lead, then what they want to know is they want to know, am I heard? Am I being heard? That does not take selling skills. That takes listening skills. So in your initial consultations, try to listen more. Ask the right questions. And by the right questions, I never ask a why question. I never say, why is that important to you? Because that puts people on the defense. It's a very defensive question. But if I can say, what about that is important to you? Or can you tell me more about that? Then they'll go into depth and they'll start telling you even more and more and more. So you're asking clarifying questions throughout your initial consultation. And I'm talking about just the intro of it, okay? We lower the reptilian. I do it by giving the 4 options. We tell them that we care about them. I do that by telling them, what I'd really like to find out is, really what a perfect mortgage looks like to you. I want to really, with my clients, I try to uncover what their true needs are. And in order to be able to do that, I have to know what they look like. So could you just take a few minutes and explain to me, what does a perfect mortgage process look like to you? Say we're 90 days down the road, and now we're looking back on the future. What did that process look like? It went exactly as you envisioned it would. What did that look like? And they'll start telling you about some very superficial things. If you're a real estate agent and you're asking them what their perfect home looks like, they may say things like, well, I want a home on a cul-de-sac, and I want to get something with 5 bedrooms. And when you really dig down a little bit deeper, you say, well, what about the 5 bedrooms is so important to you? And they say, well, with that 5th bedroom, my wife, she likes to do hobbies and crafts. Can you tell me more about that? Yeah, she likes to knit, and she just, and sew. She's got this and all this stuff, and, I just like for her to have a place where she can do that. I've never been able to give that to her. And what about the cul-de-sac? Can you tell me more about that? Yeah, I got young kids. I got 3 young kids, and, I just hate the fact that right now the cars just zip down our street, and I'm just so scared every day. I'm scared that something's going to happen. Okay, so in other words, you're looking for safety and them being able to play in a cul-de-sac. Absolutely. When I wrap up my initial consultation with these folks, when I wrap up my values part of it, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to say, okay, John and Linda, I said, what I really heard you say is that you'd like to find a home on a cul-de-sac with 5 bedrooms. And there are a lot of great homes on the market. I think that we're within your price range, and we'll get more detailed on that as we talk. But what I'd really like to do, John and Linda, is I'd like to help you get into a home where, Linda, you've got some space to do your knitting and your sewing. And John, I'd like you to feel safe about your kids playing outside. So I'm gonna look for a home on a cul-de-sac for you. When they hear me say that, come back to them and bring that back around, they know that I care about them. I've just gone past their limbic system because they feel heard. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's go to the next one. Let's see, where am I? Okay. They may feel guarded, okay, in the initial consultation. They're looking for that catch. They're missing out on most of your presentation until you get past those 2 gatekeepers, the reptilian and the limbic system. You've got to get past those 2 gatekeepers. All right. It also helps with escalations. If you've ever had anybody come to you yelling and screaming, there was a guy that I just did this training 2 weeks ago in Iowa, and I got an email the very next day about a guy who had a member that called, and this was a USAA member. The company I'm working with is Military Family Home Loans, and this lady had called in, and it was actually the second time she had called in, and one of the other loan officers had not put her into the system as a lead. And so she was screaming and yelling because the loan officer she was talking to now was asking her the information he needed just to enter it in as a lead, and she felt it was ridiculous. You should already have my information. I've already talked to somebody about this. Why are you going over this again? She was just livid, and she was already mad about something else. And so the guy completely, and I wouldn't have necessarily done this at this point. I would probably use some active listening skills at this point to deal with this escalation. But the guy, all he remembered was, in the training yesterday, Earl told me about these 4 options to lower the reptilian brain. And so he went into the 4 options with her. He said, ma'am, he says, I understand you're upset. He says, but I want you to know that, you know what, after I take all your information, you don't have to do anything with us if you don't want to. And if you decide you want to go someplace else, that's okay too. And if you decide you want to do this on your own, that's okay. But I'm hoping that you'll work with us. He said it completely neutralized her attitude, her whole reptilian brain completely neutralized her. And he said that not only did he get off the phone with her, it got all the information that he needed, and she was elated with the call. Now, it was completely out of context. It kind of reminded me of when I used to teach and do a lot of training in the insurance industry. I was training a consultant in, and one of the things that I used to do with my consultants is I would train them, and we'd go over these sales meetings and so forth, and then I would go out in the field with them. I'd show them a couple of presentations, and then I'd let them do one. Well, we've gotten into this one situation where there was this it was a close back then. This was back in the 80s, and a lot of these things don't work today, but this close was, if he looks at her and says, well, honey, what do you think? Well, the close is this. It's because we don't really necessarily, we're not concerned with what they think so much as how they feel, if this makes any sense to you at all. This limbic brain makes any sense to y'all. It's what they feel is important, is what we want to get to, right? And so the close around that, so honey, what do you think, is you lightly put your hand on the lady's hand and you say, he's not really asking, you know, what you think as much as he's asking is, do you feel this is the right thing to do? And do you like it as much as he does? And that was a close, and she would usually come back and say, oh yeah, I like it a lot, I think it's great, which sells him, and now you've got a transaction. And we had just gone over that in the sales meeting. So I take this new consultant out, and we're sitting in this presentation that he does, and he did a great job on the presentation, but sure enough, I couldn't believe it happened, but sure enough, the guy looks at the lady and he says, so honey, what do you think? And the consultant that I was training in was so excited, because we had just learned that today, that he stands up and he slaps the lady's hand. I mean, literally just slapped her hand, and he goes, he doesn't care what you think, he just wants to know if you like it. And you know what? He got the deal. It was incredible the way it worked. But it kind of reminded me of that. So escalations, you know, anytime that anybody's upset, understand that they're in the reptilian brain. I've got to do something to get past this reptilian, and I have to let them know that I care about them. Process complications, same thing. Inconsistencies. There's a lot of things that happen in the market, inconsistencies in the market. Okay? Also with referrals, I want you to understand this. When you connect with your clients on an emotional level, you will get referrals. When you connect with them on a logical level only, they'll do business with you again. Because people will do business with people that, sorry, I had a phone call coming in, but people will do business with you if they like what you did for them. So if you connect with them logically, it makes sense to them. You don't really deal much on the emotional level. You don't really deal much with connecting with the limbic system. They'll do business with you again. They really will, and they'll come back. But if you connect on an emotional level, people will refer you if they like who you are, simply because they felt heard. They felt like you actually listened to what they had to say. And I hope all that makes sense. Okay, so now let's take some live questions via the chat function. And Brad, hopefully you can help me out with this. If we can look through here. I'm looking at the chat right now, kind of, and it looks like, hey, it looks like we may have Eric Chinesco on the line. How you doing, Eric? Good to see you, buddy. And he has here, what is your biggest takeaway?
No, that was me, Earl. I was getting the...
Oh, that's right. You're Eric today. I forgot about that.
Eric's the big kahuna. We have to pretend to be him when we get these things going.
That's right. That's right. I just looked at the chat and I saw his name and got all excited and thought, oh, wow, Eric can shed some words of wisdom.
Well, here's what I would ask right now, just to kind of get it started, is what do you feel like when you're coaching people that is kind of one of the more common things that you see where you can apply this stuff? I mean, they get the same stuff. It's not like we hear a lot of new things, new challenges that are out there. So what's probably like one of the more common things, like situations that come up where we can really apply this stuff?
Simply a basic understanding of the human behavior, why people do what they do, why people say what they say. Never take anything on a surface level. In other words, the first objection, and I'm sure that you've had sales trainings around objection handling, but in objection handling, the first objection is never the real objection. It's the same thing when you're connecting with the limbic. When they think they're telling you about their values or what's important to them, it's really very surface level. So digging down deeper is the best advice I can give for anyone. You know, for example, well, the example I gave on the house, you know, buying a house. Say that they call you up and they do want to know, they're asking what the rate is. That's not the important issue. It's the only thing that they know that you have in common with everyone else they're talking to in their minds. And so if you just can skip by that and say, you know, I know that rate's really important, and I'm sure that you've heard all kinds of different rates from everybody, and really we all work off the same rates. But let me ask you a few questions first to find out really what your needs are. And you can kind of go back into that ultimate interview portion and really uncover their needs. When you start that process, though, don't stop too soon. Don't stop too soon. You've got to dig down deeper. And if you have a question, go ahead and just type it into the chat box, and then I can.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're all plugged into the chat. If that comes through, I told them to post it on the questions box.
Oh, okay.
You might pull down your questions box, but we haven't had. I don't have another question that's come in from anybody on the call so far.
All right.
And this stuff is actually just off the chart, like amazing, guys. I mean, I know it's a pretty deep conversation for a webinar, and it's not like you're getting this do step 1, do step 2, do step 3, and you're going to close another loan. But I will tell you, every time I hear this information, I hope you're really absorbing this into how you run your business and really thinking about how can you apply this and really be aware of it. I mean, it's really about watching this webinar about 3 or 4 or 5 more times to really get comfortable, because, I mean, as soon as we say limbic and all that other stuff, it starts getting pretty deep.
I know it does. It seems deep. It really does.
I tell you, I mean, we are in the people business, and I mean, this goes right in line with another series that we've got coming up with Greg Frost, and we'll probably talk about it here in a second. But Cialdini has written a book called Influence, and Greg Frost is doing a series, and we probably have a slide on here to tell you guys about it. It really goes into how to influence people to make the right decision, and to influence people, I mean, you really do need to know how to get past that reptilian part of the brain, and it is just amazing. It's going to happen to you today. You're gonna actually pull the reptilian on somebody today. I bet you do.
Yeah, it'll happen, or you'll be more aware of it. And really, awareness is really all we're trying to stimulate here. This is nothing that's. I've been doing this for years and years and years. In fact, I've been training this now for over 20 years, and or versions of it. And even today, I learn more and more about it. That just blows my mind, and I learn more and more instances. Before, when I used to do this stuff, I used to just do it in an initial consultation. I thought that was where it was applicable, and I thought that was the only place I could apply it. But then all of a sudden I started realizing that, oh my gosh, you know, my kids come to me in reptilian. My wife comes to me in reptilian, right? And people that I know, and there's all kinds of, and then I started noticing different forms of reptilian, you know, the real mild kind of reptilian that just takes a little bit of coercing to bring them out of that. You know, and then there's the major reptilian where we have the tunnel vision, and we're really, really focused on what we're so upset about, and nothing else matters. That's that real focused reptilian brain, you know. So there's different forms of reptilian. I was doing some training at Edward Jones Mortgage, and one of the things I used to do there for them is I would sit side by side after doing a sales training with their HMCs, which are their loan officers, is what they are. And we went through a sales training, and I would sit side by side with them for an hour and listen to them on the phone. And what I realized was we can talk about these things till we're blue in the face, And you don't really absorb it until you're actually put in that situation. Just like what you said, Brad, they're going to recognize reptilian. And the awareness is the biggest teacher. And so I would sit side by side with them, and then I would take them in with their manager into a coaching session, and we would coach them for 30 minutes or so, and I would tell them what I observed and certain things that I could help them with. And during that conversation, it's funny because the reptilian can peek up at any time. And so it's not just the very beginning of your initial consultation. You need to watch for it throughout the entire process. You know, when things go bad, when I have bad news to deliver, how do I deal with that? If I understand the reptilian brain, then I'm going to deal with it a lot differently than if I just try to be logical with them. There was an old proverb saying that it was a Shaker proverb that said, you can't reason people out of what they didn't reason themselves into. And so when people come to us upset, our initial response is to, well, that doesn't make sense because, you know, logically it's, and we try to appeal to them on a logical level. When they're in reptilian, they're not hearing us on a logical level. They don't get that. They're looking for safety. They're looking for, you know, to see if they can trust you. They're not looking for logic. And so when we're dealing with situations with our kids, with our wives, with our husbands, our boyfriends, our girlfriends, when we're dealing with clients, any time that someone is upset about something, if we first stop and realize they're in their reptilian brain, I need to make them feel safe. If we do that first, then the conversation will go so much better from there on out.
And Earl,
it's just true.
Somebody had asked if you could go back to the limbic slide again, the characteristics, where they're that characteristic slide. Okay. Pull that up again. And then a great question came up is, you know, is this called consultative selling? And I don't know that I've really heard this called that. That's more asking them questions. But what's your response on that? Is this called consultative selling?
I think that it would fall within that category, absolutely. Consultative selling, it's more like a needs-based, values-based selling model.
Well, and that you just come back to where when you're showing them that you care, it means that, well, we've all heard the saying, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, you know, and you're supposed to use them respectively. So I guess that is where you get into the consultative side of the selling, is you're listening to what they're looking for.
And you're looking for their needs and their values. You're looking for those types of things. So you could call it consultative selling. I've heard it called needs-based selling. I've heard it called values-based selling. It was all coined back in the early 90s when a guy came up and said, features and benefits don't matter as much anymore because people could find anything they need on the internet now. And so he said what's important is that you learn to get into relationship selling. So that's what I like to call it. It's relationship selling. What I'm doing is I'm building a relationship and I'm really finding out what matters to you. I really want to know. And it was funny because I had one of the loan officers over at Edward Jones Mortgage one time who went out and he tried all this stuff and took it to a level where he was comfortable with it. Because you're not going to feel comfortable with the way I do it all the time. You might, but this is something that, like I said, I've been working for 20 years on. And so I've developed it into my own style, and I would encourage you guys to take it and develop it into your own style. Make it yours. Make it your own. Otherwise, you're not going to use it. If you don't feel comfortable with it, you're not going to use the stuff. But he came back and he said, wow, he goes, this stuff's amazing. He goes, but I realized something is I actually have to care about my clients in order to use this. And I said, absolutely. You know, and I know that you folks care about your people. I know that you do. And this is a way to show them that you do. It's a way of connecting. So that's the first characteristic slide. There's a second one if you want me to advance to that one.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, Earl, can you also remind them where they can go find all the past webinars? Because we do make these available for free. Here's the thing. We offer this to you free because we know what this information does for our coaching clients. And like anything, having this information available for you to really just understand it at a point where you can apply it to your business, it's going to lead to a point where you realize how this can work in your business and you're ready to take your business to the next level. So one of the things that we do, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, is we do offer a sample coaching session. We call it a strategy session to take the information from one of these webinars and how do you actually start applying it. And it's a free call, 30 minutes to an hour. We just kind of help you with your business, get that strategized, and let you experience what a coaching call is actually like. we're not high pressure. We are looking for people that really truly want to take their business to the next level. That's why we offer it. You're not going to get some high pressure coaching sales pitch on these things. It is a session like nothing. I mean, it's just like if you were a paying client, you're going to get the same information and the same content. So that's just how you take this information and how do you apply it to your business.
Exactly. And you know what's cool about this is during these strategy sessions, I start with 4-option opener. I simply let you know what, we're going to talk about something that's important to you. If you could find one thing that you want to work on in your business today that I can help you with, that's what we're here for. But I want you to know that you don't have to continue on. If you decide that coaching's not right for you, then that's fine. If you decide you want to use someone else, and there's a lot of coaches out there, maybe we don't connect. That's okay too. And thirdly, you might go out and do it on your own. You might look up all this stuff on your own, hold yourself accountable to these goals that you have. Then again, if we do have a connection, I'd like you to consider to possibly, start doing some coaching with us. But those are your options. I start my sessions out that way because I want them to know that I'm more interested in the fact that they get something out of that session, right?
So whether or not they got something that they can apply to their business from this particular session or not, because this is definitely that one that I've had to go through. I mean, I have to go back through the material like 6, 7, 8 times just to let it absorb. But where they can go back and reference the other webinars, and they might see something in one of the other webinars that goes, oh, now that I need to start using today, and they can take advantage of the strategy session from any one of those. Where would they find those past webinars?
I know that if you're on the webinar today, if you registered for the webinar today, that you will get an email that will link you back to the recording of this one today. I'm just going to assume, Brad, that those other ones are in there. Honestly, I'm not sure.
I do think it is when you register for one of our webinars, then you'll have access to all the past webinars. You'll have a website. Christy's on the line. She's probably listening in, but I haven't seen her post the question to let us know where it is, and she might do that before we're done. Before we finish and before you guys head out, can you go back to Greg Frost's slide? Guys, I'm telling you, if you don't know Greg Frost, I mean, he is an amazing, amazing gentleman. And I know David's on the line today. He knows Greg Frost very well. We bump into a lot of you at a lot of the conferences around here. And I'm telling you, what's cool about what Greg has done is he's got a 6-part series, and it talks about this. Everything we talked about today is going to go into, he's going to break this into very detailed 6 sessions. And what's really cool about the way he set it up, the way Greg set it up, is you can buy the sessions individually if there's just one piece you want to work on, or you can get a whole package deal and get a discount on it. The thing that's amazing about this is Greg actually spent time with Cialdini, the author of the book, and has been certified as one of his coaches that can really take his material and get you to the mastery level. So if today was intriguing at all, I mean, the first thing I would tell you to do is you're going to get a link to go back and watch the webinar again. Watch it a couple of times. Feel free to email us. Email Earl. Ask him any specific questions. Take advantage of a strategy session. And if you think that this is something that you're going to want to do to take this stuff to the next level and really understand how people think, how you can get your message through to them quicker and influence them to make the right decision, whatever that decision is, just like Earl was talking about today. The decision may be to do nothing right now. Doesn't mean they're not going to do nothing in the future. Take advantage of that, maxexcelcoach.com/Greg Frost, and you can jump on all 6 webinars for $297. That's just the amount of information that you'll get. See, I learned something. It's an investment in your business when you see stuff like this, and sometimes when you see prices that are just like, I don't know if I only make it on one of these, that's probably worth $297. The information I'll get. Those are the kind of things that you just invest in your business, and it's an investment that you're going to get. Who knows how big of a return on it? It's going to be huge. But Greg is an amazing person. He really does know how to help you understand the information and how to apply it to your business, and super knowledgeable. So
yeah. And now you got to understand that we had to twist Greg's arm in order to get this price reduced as well too. So you have to use the discount code YES. So when you go on to www.mxcelcoach.com/Greg Frost, you're going to come up to registration page, it's going to ask you for some information, but it's going to say that it's $4.99. But there's a place for you to plug in a discount code, and it is case sensitive, YES. If you plug in that all caps, plug in that discount code YES, then it will, and then hit apply discount, because I've actually gone onto the form and tried this, and it brings it in at $2.97. And we had to twist Greg's arm to get him down to that rate. So he's only letting us offer that good through today. They're going to be taking that code down after today. So just so you know that, then it's going to go back up to the $4.99. I think there were some $50 discounts that were flying around out there previously, but I know that he's only doing this one for today only. So right, that $2.97 price.
Yep. Is there any other information we need to close out with before?
I think we need to. I think we just need to go over what we always go over as coaches. We wouldn't be worth our weight in gold if we didn't at least bring this up. So try to decide from the webinar today, what was the most valuable thing that you heard on this program? Was it the limbic system? Was it the 4-option opener? Was it understanding the reptilian? And what action must you take to make this part of your daily business? Now, that could mean that you need to learn more about it. And I know that Brad had mentioned our strategy sessions, and Brad is a great person to talk to during a strategy session with this. Stephanie York, another one of our coaches, are awesome with this material. Eric understands it very well. I would love to talk to anyone that wants to know a little bit more about it. But the strategy session is a full hour strategy session. If that's your next step, then write that down. And by when will you have this action implemented? And who will you ask to hold you accountable? Accountability is one of the most important things in coaching. You'll find us, with our coaching clients, accountability is probably one of the main things that moves them forward. They can know exactly what they need to do. In fact, most of you probably understand exactly what you need to do. My wife's been a mortgage banker for 22 years, and she knows what she needs to do, but sometimes the little things in our life get in the way, and we just never make time for those important things that we need to do. One of the things she needs to do is just start calling her past clients. And right now, during this rate and this refi boom that we have going on, we're inundated with phone calls. We're working deals all the time, and we kind of forget, and we lose touch with those people that really are really important to us. Those are the people that we've done business with before. And so finding someone that will hold you accountable to making those phone calls is important. It's really extremely important. So if you can, just pick out the most valuable thing you heard today. What action do you need to take to make it part of your daily business? By when will you have that action implemented? The date is important. You have to have some kind of a stopgap. You can't just say, I'll do it sometime next week. When people tell me that, I say, great, when's a good time next week? And they say, well, I guess probably Tuesday would be a great time next week. I say, what time on Tuesday? I mean, I get real specific on when they're going to have this implemented. And then is there a cost to that? If I don't get it done, what's going to happen? And then who's going to hold you accountable?
Well, and so before you all jump off the line, I really want to thank our coach today, Earl. If you guys will let him know if you did get some value out of today's program, and this is something you want to go see, just post on the question tab real quick. Just say, thanks, Earl, awesome webinar, or you should go away, Earl. No, I'm kidding. But definitely let him know. Just show your appreciation for him taking time out of his schedule to share this information with us today, and let him know that you guys did get something out of that. We appreciate y'all tuning in. I don't know if there's anything else we need to really cover. We've already talked about the strategy session and definitely made everybody aware of Greg's program. I think that's it, isn't it, Earl? I
believe that's about it. I think we'll probably just leave this open for a little bit in case people want to post questions. If you happen to want, since Christy is on the line, if you do want to schedule a strategy session, just put your information in there, where in the chat or in the questions box there, and Christy can contact you and let you know how that's going to happen. Other than that, I don't know that anything else. Get on that Greg Frost Maximum Influence. It's amazing, it really is. So I think that's about it.
All right.
Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it.
It's great seeing you on the line, David. David Kuiper on the line. It's good to see your name on there. All right, we'll see you all later. Thanks for tuning in. We'll leave it on. We'll leave the questions open for a little bit.
All right. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate your help on this one.
Oh, you too. Love working with you, Earl.
All right. Take care, buddy. I got to get to Iowa. So.
All right, take off. I'll see what questions pop up, and we'll close her down here in about 2 minutes.
All right, thanks, buddy. I appreciate your help. See you later. Bye-bye.
Have fun in Iowa.
I will.